Good morning, boys and girls. Today we're going to be reading a nonfiction book. We are going to be reading Flight of the Honeybee. Okay, I just want to remind you guys that nonfiction books are books that are going to teach us something usually real about the real world. And sometimes when we read nonfiction books, we sometimes know that they're nonfiction books by looking at the cover and noticing real pictures. But in this nonfiction book of Flight of the Honeybees, you'll notice that the pictures in this book are actually illustrated, unlike other nonfiction books. But in this book, it does teach us stuff, but also actually has a story. So this is the kind of a mixture of a nonfiction book with a little story to it. So today we're going to read it, and as we read, we're going to be thinking about what we already know about this topic of the honeybee, and then what we want to learn and what we do end up learning. So I want you to be thinking the whole time when we read this book today about what you already know and what you want to learn, and then when we're done reading it, I want you to think about what you have learned from this book. So again, nonfiction books are books that teach us something about a specific topic, and today's topic is the honeybee. Are you ready? Here we go. So Flight of the Honeybee. This is by Raymond Hubert, and it's illustrated by Brian Lovelock. So before we begin this nonfiction book, I want you guys to be thinking about what do you think you know about this topic, about honeybees? I am imagining some of you are saying that honeybees can sting you, right? I'm sure some of you have been stung before, or some of you are afraid to be stung like myself. I've never been stung by a honeybee before, but I'm definitely terrified. Although I hear it's not too scary or not too painful after all, but think about what you know. We know that they fly. You probably know that when they fly, sometimes you hear a buzzing sound. And yeah, usually they're black and yellow is the color that they usually come. So think about what you know. I'll give you a moment to think. If you have paper, you can jot down what you know about the honeybee. And I'll give you a couple seconds to do that. A few seconds to do that. What do you already know about this topic? If you're done writing that down, maybe you can go ahead and write, what do you want to learn about the honeybee? So that you can think about that when we're reading today. Okay, let's go ahead and begin. The honeybee is one of the smallest creatures in the world, but it may be the most important for life on Earth. It is the planet's greatest pollinator, moving pollen from one plant to another, causing flowers to produce seeds and fruits. Honeybees can live in the wild or in boxes made by beekeepers. A honeybee can't live alone. It's part of a family that works closely together. A bee is always changing jobs. First, she is a cleaner, then a babysitter, a builder, a guard, a scout, and finally a harvester. This is the story of a scout. So like I said, this is a nonfiction book. It's going to teach us things, but it's also going to tell us a little story. Here we go. Flight of the Honeybee. A bee the size of a cherry pit crawls from the hive. Her stripes glow golden in the morning sun. Scout has spent her whole life in the crowded hive. Now it is time for her to fly out and explore the world. Time to search for flowers from which to collect pollen and nectar for food. Her sister bees are inside, making honey, but will there be enough? The cold is coming, and Scout must find the last flowers of the fall. And on the bottom of this story, we have some information. It says, there are about 50,000 female bees in a hive, and very few males. So if you think about females is a fancy word for a girl. And males is a fancy word for boys. So it says they have 50,000 female or girl bees in a hive and very few males or very few boys. So mostly in a beehive, there's mostly girl bees or women bees. Scout's wings hum to life so fast that they are almost invisible, lifting her into the wide sky. She rises in a spiral, up and away from the hive. she's taken off from her hive. See? Scout remembers what she passes as she flies, so that later she can return home. She knows the sun will guide her too. And it says here under the information that bees navigate using sunlight, landmarks, and smell. They also have a magnetic sense that is like a built-in compass, so that helps them to get back home. Scout flies swift and straight as an arrow. The wind buffets her, ruffling the fine hairs on her face, but she keeps on steadily and rides out the rapids. Eyes as black as polished stones are searching, seeking a splash of color below. And it says eyes as black as polished stones. It means the eyes are really black and glossy. Like polish means glossy, right? An arresting smell drifts on the breeze. Scout locks onto this scent. She flies over a clearing, and spread before her is a marvelous meadow of an ocean of flowers. Look how beautiful this looks. And right here in the smaller print where it has the information that we're learning, it says that bees are furry, even their eyeballs. The hairs help them sense changes in the wind. Here's some more information here. It says bees have a powerful sense of smell. They use their antenna to pick up scents. So antennas are the things sticking out of their heads, right? Bees can smell in stereo, each antenna smelling in a different direction. Think about what we learned about bees. Remember, as we're reading this, I want you to be thinking, oh, I knew that, or oh, I didn't know that yet. A flash of feathers. A hungry blackbird swoops for the kill, but Scout zips down and escapes into the trees, weaving between tangled twigs. Looks like he had a predator coming towards him. It says many creatures eat honeybees, including other insects such as wasps and dragonflies, as well as spiders, frogs, birds, and mammals such as bears and badgers. So these are all the different types of things that can eat bees. So they have a lot of predators following them, so they have to be real quick to get away. Here's the picture. When the coast is clear, Scout is drawn to the sea of flowers again. She settles on a velvety petal and plunges her head into the flower. Here is a sunken treasure, a cup of sweet nectar. The tip of her tongue, shaped like a miniature spoon, sips the syrup. So it seems like nectar. If you don't know what the word nectar means, it says that it sips the syrup. So nectar maybe could be like a syrup, I'm assuming, right? Because if you don't know what nectar, a word means in a story, you could kind of like look at the words around it and try to make a quick guess as to what the word might mean. So it says, a cup of sweet nectar, the tip of her tongue, shaped like a miniature spoon, sips the syrup. So it might be, nectar might mean syrup. Scout zigs and zags from the flower to flower, spreading pollen around. The pollen clings to her fuzzy body, a sprinkle of sun powder. So, if you look closely, you can see that she has some pollen on her. And then in the information, it says that bees are charged with static electricity during flight, which attracts pollen to their bodies. They have an extra stomach in which they carry nectar home. Interesting. I didn't know that. Did you? Scout. Here we are. Scout has finished drinking. She must tell her sister bees about this field of blue. But a thundercloud cloaks the sun. All at once the cloud bursts. Rain batters Scout to the ground. She crawls under a leaf as hailstone bombs explode around her. So it looks like, can you tell? Rain is actually stopping her from flying anymore. Hope she'll be okay. And it says in the information here, bees avoid rain and storms. Raindrops can damage them and chill their wing muscles, leaving them grounded. Grounded means they're not able to fly anymore. They're unable to fly. So I hope she can get back home. This can be a challenge for Scout. Let's stop and think right now. What have you been right about what you knew about bees? Was anything that you already knew mentioned? And what new information have you learned so far? Go ahead and I'm give you a quick minute to think about what new information you've learned so far and tell someone at your house, maybe your mom, your dad, grandma, grandpa, maybe even a big brother or sister. Tell them at least 1 to 2 new things you learned about the honeybee. Go ahead and do that now. I'm hoping that some of you have said something like, I didn't know that the honey in the hives that there are so many female or woman bees and not too many boy bees, right? Or you might have said something like, I never knew that rain affected them from flying so much. Looks like when there's rain that the bees are unable to fly very much. I had no idea. Maybe that's something new you learned, or maybe you've told your family or someone at home something different. But the point is, I want you to be thinking about what new things have you learned from reading this book. Let's keep reading and find out anything new. The downpour passes. Scout picks up the scent of her hive and follows it. Outside the hive, there's a squad of guard bees. A yellow jacketed enemy is attacking. Scout knows that twitchy way of flying it's a wasp. So sometimes, boys and girls, I bet you've seen a wasp and you might have assumed or confused it for a bee, but wasps are actually different than bees. It says that they even actually call it its enemy, so I think that possibly they attack bees as well, right? The wasp grabs Scout as she glides to land. It raises its stinger, but the guards move in, wrestling the wasp with their legs. They're actually having a little fight here. Do you see the wasp? It might look a little similar to the honeybee, but if you notice, the honeybee has more fur. Remember in the page we learned that bees have hair everywhere, even on their eyes. So bees have a lot more fur, and this wasp is a little bit, the body is a little bit different as well, and it looks a little more shiny, right? Not so much hair. You should notice that. And it says right here in the information that honeybees sting only to defend themselves. They will die after stinging larger animals. So they only sting to defend themselves. So even when they sting you maybe at your house or outside, they're probably just scared and they're thinking that they're defending themselves against you. Look at this page. Scout is safe inside the hive at last. She begins a dance on the wax comb. An audience gathers, captivated by the floral scent on Scout's body. Scout spins a story and dance, every moment a sentence. Scout waggles, twists, and turns, describing the route to the blue metal. She pauses only to share samples of the sweet nectar. Scout repeats her dance for many sister bees. So here she is, reporting back what she found, right, to all of her sister bees. And here in the information it says, the bees' dance is a complex language that can communicate millions of different messages. So it says that, I'll read that again. Sometimes when I read something, I have to read it twice to really understand what I've learned. It says the bees' dance is a complex language that can communicate millions of different messages. So it sounds like to me that bees can make a little dance and they share their messages to their family that way. The way we speak to each other, they dance and that's how they communicate. Very interesting, right? Now that the sister bees know where to find the meadow, hundreds of bees take off. They flick from the hive like golden pebbles. And it says, bees need to harvest nectar from more than 2 million flowers to make enough honey just to fill one jar. Huh. That's a lot of bees that it takes just to fill one jar for one jar of honey. I didn't know that before. So boys and girls, let's stop and think again right now. What were you right about before we begin reading this book? Remember we talked about what you knew about this topic already. What were you right about? Were you right about that you knew that they made honey, that they stung? What else were you right about? And now think about what new information have you learned so far from this book? Turn and talk to someone at your home. What did you learn? Okay, let's move on. Back in the hive, Scout passed her precious nectar to the house bees. They put it in the comb and fan it with their wings. The nectar will be transformed into liquid gold, honey for the bees to eat. And it says right here, nectar is mostly water until the bees dry and thicken it by beating it with their wings, converting it to honey. Huh. So actually the nectar, it's just nectar until they actually work on it, right? It says they have to beat it with their wings and make it thick, converting it to honey. And that means changing it into a honey. So it's actually not honey until they fix it all up. Scout visits the nursery where babysitter bees pluck the pollen from her body and mix it with honey to feed the babies. It says the queen can lay thousands of eggs a day. It is the job of the few male, remember male means boy or man, few male bees in the hive to fertilize a new queen. Nearby sits the queen. Oh, we've all heard about this, right? We all know that, or we have heard, some of you, that there's always a queen bee in the hive. Let's read more about that. Nearby sits the queen, long and lustrous. She is the mother of all the bees, laying eggs that look like tiny grains of rice. So she's laying eggs to have more bees. We have some information here on this page. It says, in its lifetime, a bee can travel more than 500 miles on flower runs until its wings eventually wear out. That's a lot of flying. Exhausted after her mission, Scout rests her silvery wings for a spell. Soon she will join her sister bees in the blue meadow for the fall harvest. With enough honey, her family can now survive the winter. Scout's daring fight has been worth every beat of her wings. So here's the end of our book right here, boys and girls. So eventually she's going to meet up with her family, and they're all going to go and collect the nectar from the blue meadow. But let's think about, this is the end of the book now. Scout has done her mission. And now they're going to collect more nectar to make honey. But I want you to think about, what was the author's message in this story? I know we've been reading other books. We read Knuffle Bunny. We read Suki's Kimono. Some of us read earlier today, we read The Quickest Kid in Clarksville. And I'm wanting you to think about the theme or the message of the story. What does the author want to teach us? And usually we talk about lessons or themes with fiction books like those. But we also want to think that some nonfiction books, like this book, Flight of the Honeybee, also have a message or a lesson. So I want you to go ahead and think, what did the author want to teach you in this book? Raymond Huber, who wrote this book, what do you think what message did he want to send to his readers? What did he want you to learn by reading this book? Go ahead and take a moment. Think about what this book has taught you, not only about what honeybees do, but what did it teach you about the honeybee that the author wanted you to learn? Go ahead and take a minute to think about that. So as I was thinking about what I had already known about the honeybee before we started reading today, I was thinking, I knew that the honeybee was yellow and black. I
I knew that the honeybees, I know sometimes can sting you. I remember being terrified as a child, but I knew that they made honey. Those are the things that I knew. But I didn't know about all the things it took to make the honey. I didn't know that it took a team of all these honeybees to make just one jar of honey. I also didn't know that one honeybee was sent out to scout for a place where they can collect so much nectar. So I had no idea about those things. I just figured that the nectar was already there in the hive. So I feel like the author Raymond Huber was trying to teach us like the process or what the honeybee does, the life of a honeybee, and that it just isn't not just about hanging out in a hive and stinging people, right? It doesn't talk about how the honeybees sting people, did it? It talked about what the honeybees do throughout their life, and I think that's what this author Raymond Huber was trying to teach us, that the honeybee is just not a bee, an animal or an insect that runs around looking for people to sting, right? It actually has its own life and its own purpose, and its purpose is to go out and find pollen and get nectar and help his other honeybee sisters find the pollen also and the nectar also so they can create honey and they can survive. Because it said that they had to survive the winter. And it also taught me like they kind of work like a family, just like we work together as a team, as maybe you and your family work as a team to do things, maybe you guys make dinner together. They also are like a family because they work together to make honey so that they can survive and feed their babies. So they're kind of just like us. I didn't think about that before. So even though this was a nonfiction book, it still taught me a valuable lesson that the honeybee is more than just an insect that stings us. It has purpose and it has life too, just like us. Okay? So whenever you're reading your books, whether it be nonfiction or fiction, make sure to remember when you're done reading your book to always think about, what did the author teach me in this book? What lesson or theme or message did the author want me to learn? And then always tell yourself what you think it might be. Try that in your next books, okay? All right, have a great day, boys and girls. See you next time.